Hey guys, welcome back. In this training, we're going to go through the research and writing process. And the first thing to do is to determine how you're going to bring this video idea to life. Would the idea look better with you on camera presenting the topic? Would it look better using solely clips and animations or even screen recordings? Or maybe a mix of those? Different topics can have different requirements, but it's obviously important to know upfront what you're going for, as that will determine whether you're better off just writing bullet points as prompts for yourself or scripting word for word. Now, I get asked all the time to share my process for actually researching and writing videos, and so the time has finally come to reveal it for those of you looking to do more of the documentary style, video essay, mini movie type videos. Now, the beauty of this style is that you can plan out exactly what you're going to say, and I strongly recommend you do write a full script out and then read that into your microphone, because this means you can rewrite certain parts as much as you need to make sure it's as engaging as possible. And it'll also make sure you don't go off on a tangent, and so just by scripting out your video, you're already ahead of the majority of people. It also has the added bonus that you can copy your script into the subtitles section on YouTube and have it auto-sync subtitles for you. Now, as for what to actually write with, I use Google Docs, and I think it's perfect for many reasons. Number one, it keeps a history of all the versions of a document, so you can revert your document back to how it was at a certain time if you don't like some of the changes you made. Number two, it's ideal for collaboration, as you can share the link with anyone to read or even edit and make suggestions, and both of you can make edits in real time that updates on both of your screens. I also link my editor to the script so they can see exactly what's written, and this is super easy. You just press the share button and send them the link. Number three, Google Docs are accessible anywhere on any device with internet, so you don't need to have the file with you or multiple copies of the same document, which just gets confusing. Plus, the changes you make on one device auto-sync to your other devices, and you can even edit the document offline too if needed. And four, it's completely free, so Google Docs is always my choice. Okay, so now let's get into my personal process for each video. Step one is light research to confirm this is a topic worth doing. It's easy to get committed to an idea, spend a huge amount of time on it, only to realize the subject matter wasn't actually that interesting or the information available wasn't good enough. So your first job is to do some initial research to confirm this is a video that's going to be genuinely interesting to both you and the audience. When you're focusing on high quality videos that are time consuming to make, it's so important to choose your topics wisely and ensure it's something with enough information and something you're going to be willing to spend time digging deep into. So this preliminary check is crucial. If there is enough good source material to make a compelling video and it's a topic you're interested in, then go to step two, the research collection phase. Now, obviously when I say research, that does not mean just looking at the top couple of results on Google. The goal is to dig deeper and find some information and angles that haven't been covered much. This means using a lot of different sources, various articles, books, YouTube videos, podcasts, tweets, and so on. The more the better, as that will ensure your work is unique and fact-checked by multiple sources. A good starting place is simply to consume a lot of content that's already written on the subject. Like search on YouTube and watch the top 10 videos on it. See if there's books and articles about it, and basically get an overview of the topic. And then whilst you're doing this research, anything that seems important or overly interesting, copy it onto a new Google Doc called topic name research. Now, one tip I would definitely give you is not to just copy and paste big chunks of text onto the research document, as that'll make it much harder to sort through later. Instead, when you copy anything over from an article or a website, just reword it in your own words to make it more concise. Because the more you can do that now, the easier you'll make your life later when you come to actually writing the script. Because just to be clear, you're not writing the story at this point. You're copying interesting research into your research document and just tidying it up a little. Then comes step three, which is my 3 secret research hacks. Firstly, use books and a Kindle. People often ask me how my videos have such in-depth information, often things they can't even find online. And the answer is because I always try to see if the subject has a book on it. The vast majority of people making videos only use internet sources, so they're all getting info from the same places. But a book tends to go much more in depth. And here's the real beauty. When you read or skim a book on a Kindle, you can highlight notes and then copy those straight into your research document. So it makes it really efficient. And it's definitely worth spending extra time to find a book on the subject, as it will give you much deeper insights than you can get online. The next research hack is knowing how to Google effectively. You likely want to be using advanced search. For example, this way you can filter by certain date ranges. So if you're looking for articles from a certain part of the story, you can search for articles from around that time period. Likewise, you may want to search for specific phrases or filter out certain words. And so this advanced search is much more effective for finding exactly what you want and finding different results to what everyone else is using. And the final research hack is Google image lookup. A lot of people don't realize you can upload or drag and drop an image into Google's image search, and it will then look up different websites that have that same image. This is really useful for finding new sources or tracing the origins of an image. It's especially helpful when the character in your story isn't someone with a big online presence and can help lead you to some lesser known resources. But then we can move on to step number 4, categorize your notes into sections. Okay, so at this point, as your Google Doc full of notes and research is growing, we want to start categorizing them rather than just dumping everything onto the document in any random order. By this point, there should be some natural subsections of the topic emerging to you already. So for example, when I was researching the history of Coca-Cola, it was obviously a vast subject, but immediately it was clear that there were different sections of the story, like how the initial formula was created, that was obviously one part. Then there was stuff I was finding about some of the controversies Coca-Cola had been involved in. Then there was stuff about Coke's battle with Pepsi. These were all parts of Coke's history, but you can see how they were different, distinct parts of the story. And so what you can do here is in Google Docs, create a title for each of these different subsections of the story, which will give you a link on the side of your Google Doc, so you can easily click on it to move between the different parts of the document. The goal here is to go from having just one big research document to a document split into subsections and move the notes under the correct headings. So with the previous example on the history of Coca-Cola, now when I was finding interesting info about the beginning of Coke, I'd put it under a title saying beginning of Coke. If I find something about Coke vs Pepsi, it'll go under the Coke vs Pepsi heading on my document. So it basically just groups the research into different sections. And quite often these titles end up being my different chapters of the actual video. Now, obviously in the final draft, some chapters get merged together or split up, but it begins to give you a structure. And so even when doing the research, it's good to be thinking how you can categorize the story and break it down into chunks, as it makes it more manageable and organized. But not just that, it also helps you spot gaps. For example, if I've got a section on the early days of Coke, and then the next section is about Coke's big marketing campaigns, clearly I need a section on how Coke went from being a small company to a bigger company. So I'll add a new section title about Coke's growth. And I may need to go and actively seek out more information about that. Like I'll specifically search for how Coke grew into a bigger company. And so you can begin to become more targeted with your research once you've got these different subsections the document is split into. And so basically, as you're looking through all this research and copying relevant things into your research document, pay attention to what questions you have, or what questions you know your audience will have, as each of those questions is likely going to be a part of the video you want to cover, and thus can be a section on your script. Like for example, with my research, I remember seeing someone say the war helped Coca-Cola's expansion, and I knew I wanted to drill further into that. So I added a subsection on my document called War, and specifically went down that rabbit hole of how Coke utilized the war to grow their business. And anything I found on that, it went under the war subheading. And I assure you, once you start splitting it into sections, it makes it so much easier to develop a narrative of how the story will go. Even if you don't use those sections in your actual video, it'll make the writing process easier by breaking a big topic into more manageable little topics. Step 5 is then to condense, summarize, and eliminate. At this point, your research document should be more organized into sections, but it's still way too long. The good news is, now it's split up like this, it should be much easier to see where you have duplicate or unnecessary information that can be deleted. Likewise, long paragraphs can be summarized so they only contain the most important information, and boring, unimportant stuff can be deleted. At this point, I also like to begin rearranging my information within each individual section into a more obvious or chronological order. So even though it's still quite rough notes on our research document, I begin putting it into a more logical order. Then comes step 6, create a new separate Google document called topic name script, and we're now going to transfer our research to the script document by rewriting it into a more story-friendly format. Remember, you've already split your research into sections at this point, which can act as different chapters of your story, and it's much less intimidating working on one chapter at a time instead of a whole script all at once. So you can almost treat each chapter as its own mini story. So for example, chapter 1, I only want to talk about the early days of this person or company or event or whatever it is your story is about. So at this step, I've got both my research document and my actual script document open, and I'm going to use all the research and notes I have on section 1 to actually write section 1 of my real script. No copy and pasting, you're writing it using the research you have, but writing it in your own words on the script documents. And then obviously you repeat that for all the other sections of your script as well. But I do want to stress, at this stage, we're not trying to write a perfect script. We're just trying to get a cohesive narrative in chronological order, because this is going to be our first draft. Then step 7, once you've got a very basic first draft on your script document, this is where you can go back through it and reword things to be more interesting, make cuts in any parts where it feels like it's dragging, and do any final bits of research if it feels like there are some parts that need more clarification or detail. It's certainly not uncommon that some parts of the script may need to be rewritten once the first draft is completed, or they'll at least need more of the storytelling principles applied that we talk about in the storytelling training. And you can literally just go through the list of the storytelling techniques and add as many as possible. So it's almost like you've done your first draft, which is just kind of the bare bones of how the story's going to go, but then you go in and add all the flair and special storytelling techniques that make it come to life. But the point is, we've now gone from having loads of research to having research categorized into different subsections to then writing it as a rough first draft and then editing the first draft to turn it into a final draft. Trying to do all that at once would be very overwhelming, but splitting it into these different stages makes it much more manageable. And a quick hack, I like to color code the chapter titles on my main script. So red means it still needs a lot of work, orange means I've got all the information I want in the chapter, but just need to tidy it up. Light green means it's pretty much done, but I just have to have one final read through for any little tweaks. And bright green means it's fully done, ready to record. That way I know I don't need to focus on that chapter anymore and can easily identify which parts of the script are at what stage. Now, why do I use this 2 Google Doc structure? Personally, I just find it's easier to separate them, so the research doc can just be a place to dump stuff, whereas the script document, you're much more careful and deliberate about what you put on there, and you never copy and paste things on the script doc. You always rewrite things from your research in your own words and unique way. Okay, so that's my basic process, but of course we're going to go more in depth in other trainings about actually telling a great story and being creative and original. But I just wanted to show you the basic process to start with, because you can basically think of it as a funnel. We start with loads of information on a topic at the start from our research, but then at each stage we're funneling it down to less and less information, just keeping the most important, relevant and interesting stuff until the end. All we're left with is the gold, where we've taken all this different research and condensed it into one new original narrative. As for what the script length should be, personally, I think you shouldn't try to hit a specific word count, because that tends to mean leaving important details out or adding boring filler, and so it can be quite restrictive. The script should be however long or short it needs to be for this specific story. However, do be careful here that this doesn't lead to lots of unnecessary details or repetitiveness or rambling. One of the hardest parts of a script is cutting out any filler and focusing only on the most interesting and crucial parts of the story. If it's unnecessary and boring, cut it. Because yes, longer videos can be great, but only if the source material allows for that. Don't stretch it out for the sake of it or people will lose interest. And finally, if you're someone who doesn't like writing and this all sounds horrible to you, of course you can hire someone to write scripts for you. I'll admit it can be a tough job to hire for, as not many people are great storytellers, but one workaround is if you can get someone else to do the research and write the first draft of the script, but then you go in and apply the storytelling principles from the other training in this course, that can actually work really well, as it's those storytelling principles where the real magic happens. Just to say though, if you do hire someone to help you with your scripts, use a plagiarism checker and make sure to fact check their scripts. Okay, so now we've got an overview of the research and writing process. In an upcoming training, we'll look at how we add that magic of storytelling to turn your script into something truly incredible.